Hello, guys. It's Wednesday. It's a little after 1, as usual. I'm Dawn. Welcome to R's Cooking School. I hope you guys are watching out there. We're going to make birthday cake. I heard that August was the month with the most birthdays. So we thought we'd give you guys a hand, show you the way toward easy birthday sheet cake. So the idea behind this recipe was make it yourself. So instead of buying a sheet cake from the grocery store deli with like all the rosettes and stuff, you can make it yourself. The good news about this recipe is you can make it in a 9 by 13. You can make 2 layers. You can make 24 cupcakes. Up to you. I'm just going to show you how to make this sheet cake today. Let's quickly review the rules before we get started. 1, wash hands, right? 2, silence phones, late addition. 3, play nice. This is a constructive teaching kitchen, and I aim to keep it that way. If you don't have anything nice to say, you are now dismissed. I hope you ate your vegetables for lunch, because we're having cake. Okay, let's get started. So, we're going to go over some basic baking kind of rules today. This cake has butter. It's got a little bit of oil as well, egg, sugar, the basic baking stuff. But I want to remind you guys some best practices when it comes to measuring and that kind of thing. Okay? Any questions? None in the room, none on the internet? Let's do it. No? Okay, we're going to do it. So, baking is one of those things as, Jerry, did you remind me? Someone reminded me that just because you're maybe a naturally gifted cook doesn't always mean you're a naturally gifted baker, and vice versa. Baking, you know, there's like measuring, you have to be kind of precise, you're setting timers. In cooking, when you can kind of riff, you can do a little less of that when you're baking until you get like really good at it. But otherwise, I would say when it comes to baking, follow the recipe at least the first few times, and it'll keep you on the straight and narrow. Okay, let's talk about measuring. All-purpose flour, this is what you want to keep on hand for most of your baking. When I am using a lot of flour, let's say like more than 2 cups, this recipe, I remember, calls for 3.5 cups. Brooke, is that right?
Of flour?
Yeah.
3.5 cups.
3.5 cups. I've got a fact checker in the room. But when a recipe calls for more than about 2 cups of flour, I like to actually decant it into a big bowl, and I'll tell you why. Some of you may have experienced like tough cakes or like really dense cookies in the past. That's because my guess is you're measuring flour right out of the bag and like you're doing this, right? You're maybe even doing this. Both bad. You see how that settled, that flour settled? It was even with the lip of that measuring cup, and now it's not. You know why? Because it compressed. So generally, when we, in the recipe writing community, I know because I know a lot of them, when we're writing recipes or baking, we want you to aerate or spoon and level. So this is what I usually do. I give it like a scoop and a dump, a scoop and a dump. That way I know that this flour is not like compact and compressed on top of itself. Or you can spoon and level into the cup, okay? It just depends like how fast you want to go or how particular you're being. Okay, so here's this. Cup is overfloweth, right? No good? Take a flat-sided thing, your spoon that you were spooning with, or a knife, and then you just run it across. See why the big bowl is helpful? That can be a little hard to do when you're working right over the bag, but this is the best way to get an accurate measure of flour, and it will make a difference, okay? So 3.5 cups, ready? 1. Let's do it again. 1. You don't want to count too much or you'll get distracted. So this is the 2nd cup. I'm not going to forget. Spooned and tap, tap, level. That's 2 cups. Going for 3.5 total. This is my 3rd. Now, you don't have to measure all of your dry ingredients in this like fussy a way, but flour, you're going to want to do this. Sugar, the crystals are more uniform. And think about it, like you can feel the size of the crystal in your hands of the sugar. So this is as compressed as it's going to be. The flour, not so much. So you just got to keep it in mind. How many did I put in there? I need 1/2 cup. Okay, woo! I said fact checkers. I wasn't kidding. Okay, 1/2 cup. Now, here's another thing. These are measuring cups, duh, right? These are dry measuring cups. Now, one of the other mistakes I think that happens a lot when people are baking and then they get sad when their stuff doesn't turn out, they're using a liquid measuring cup, which is this, to measure their dry ingredients. You see how that doesn't work? In order to get a level measure in here, you have to settle it, right? So you're going to get more of that dry ingredient than you're really after. So use this for your liquid stuff, use these for your dry ingredients. Make sense? Good? Nodding in the room? Great. Okay, we've got 3½ cups of flour. And baking, especially a cake like this, it kind of reminds me of a stir fry. Once you start beating, it happens really fast. So take the time ahead of once the beating starts, once the butter starts melting, to get all of your ingredients in order. Now, one hot tip I'm going to tell you, once you've measured out your flour and you have used a bigger bowl, get this out the way. Yesterday, I was putting my other ingredients in there, and I had to get rid of the flour because that was not the right amount. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so we've got 3½ cups of flour. Salt. Brooke, what do I need?
2 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder.
No, I said salt.
Oh, salt. 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt.
1¼ teaspoon. 1 1/4. Okay, and then baking powder. What was it?
2 1/4 teaspoons.
2 1/4 teaspoons. So, guys, you know why this lip is there on most baking powder things? So you can spoon and level. Same thing, get in there, give it a little scoopy scoop to aerate, and then come back and level it right along that edge, right? What do you say? 2 1/4?
Yeah.
2 1/4 T, right in there. That's 2 1/4. Great. And then baking soda.
1/2 teaspoon.
1/2 T. Okay. Are you sure?
Of baking soda?
Yeah. All right. I would have said 1/4. What do I know? What do I know? I just wrote the recipe. Just another reminder that, guys, once we make recipes, they're like out of our heads forever. And even when we've made them several times in the last couple of days, you still have to look at the ingredients and the directions. So I've got 3½ cups of flour. I've got baking powder. Let's quickly review here. Baking powder versus baking soda. Both are chemical leaveners, okay? Leavener to leaven to rise. That's what these guys are doing. Natural leaveners, yeast, and eggs. Okay, we're also going to use some eggs in here. But baking powder, often you can see here labeled double acting. That means it reacts twice. Once when it gets wet and once when it gets hot. So you find it in a lot of cakes and that kind of thing. Also because you need extra lift. Baking soda reacts once, and one, it offers a little extra browning. So if you're ever making a cake and you're wondering, like, why is this like pale, pale, pale? You could always add like a pinch of baking soda. That will help. But baking soda is also used when you want, when there's something acidic used. So buttermilk, lemon juice, yogurt, you'll see baking soda in those recipes. Okay, so I'm just going to give these dry ingredients a little bit of a whisk, and then these are ready. Okay, so dry ingredients standing by. It's kind of annoying when you read that first step of the recipe, but do it. It makes a difference. Okay, let's prep our pan. Jerry has a question.
When do you sift and when do you whisk?
Jerry has a question. When do you sift and when do you whisk? Very good question. The recipe will typically tell you, and I would trust the recipe. Sifting, I think, usually happens when you're using cake flour. It's very, very fine, and you want to separate any of those clumps. I think most, I'm going to say modern cake recipes, but like most cake recipes written for the everyday baker, not the professional baker, you can get away with just whisking. But if it says sift, go ahead and sift. And if you're ever using an ingredient like powdered sugar can get really clumpy, or if you're living in a really humid environment, things can clump. If it looks clumpy, go ahead and sift it. It's not going to hurt. But know that a sifted dry ingredient will measure different than an unsifted. Make sense? Jerry got it. Okay. Okay, so this recipe also calls for 1/2 cup, 1 stick unsalted butter. Is this the cutest little saucepan you ever did see? Okay, I melted the butter in here. Here's another hot tip. When we ask you to, lightly grease a pan, listen, I'm usually using Pam. It's easy, or some similar type of pan product, just to lightly spray. It gives a really nice light coating. I like that. But I also, if butter is melted in a recipe, I'll just dip a little brush in here and brush my pan with that. I'm not going to lose so much that I need to measure more in this case. I'm not going to worry about it. Depends on the size of your pan. This is a 9 by 13. This is my preferred pan for this recipe, and I mean that specifically, like this metal 9 by 13. This one's by Calphalon. I don't really care the brand. Just make sure it's sturdy. Like, this is not going to warp and bend when it gets hot and when it cools off. Pyrex is fine also. However, keep this in mind. Dark pans, and I'm not totally sure about the technical science about this, but it does make some common sense when you think about it. Dark pans will brown whatever in there faster than a glass one, okay? Or a light colored pan. Make sense? Nodding, nodding, everyone's nodding. Okay, so this particular recipe, you will see if you go to the link, Make It Yourself Birthday Cake, has you butter and flour the cake pan. That's totally fine. If you may be feeling lazy and you happen to have pre-cut half sheets of parchment paper, you can use that. It's really up to you, and how are you going to present this thing? If you're going to serve it right from the dish, maybe you don't want the parchment showing, but that's up to you. We're gonna keep it cash here. I will say, parchment paper, we just ordered this in our kitchen here. You can order it already cut in half sheets. It's like a tad more expensive, but if you do a lot of baking, it's like very, very convenient. You can just keep it on a sheet pan ready to go. Okay, see how tidily that fit? And if it's a 9 by 13, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and butter one more time. Guys, if you're just joining us, we are making birthday cake today. August is the month with the most birthdays. I thought it was September, but I trust whoever told me that they're right. So we're just gonna get you guys set up. If you've got birthdays coming up, do you guys, for summer birthdays, do you still do that thing where you can celebrate your school birthday like in June or September? Is that a thing that they do? I don't know. Okay, so we're using melted butter in this recipe versus room temp butter because it's going to affect the crumb of the cake. How do I explain this? When you use like room temp butter, you know, slightly softened butter, ultimately you're going to get the consistency closer to a pound cake, like a tighter crumb. I wanted something like a little squishier, so we've got some melted butter, and we're also going to use some vegetable oil as well. You could make this with all vegetable oil. Why do we use butter? Because it tastes delicious, okay? Sometimes the reasons are that simple. Okay, 4 large eggs. Remember, most baking recipes these days are written for large eggs, except yours, Ina. But it does make a difference. So make sure you look at the recipe and use what they call for. It won't like not work, but you will definitely get a different effect. Okay, 4 eggs go into my mixer. We have the stand mixer. This cake recipe works with the hand mixer also. But I got other stuff to do, and this means I can walk away from it. But I grew up making cakes with a hand mixer, and look at me now. Ha-ha! Okay, 4 eggs. And then what goes in here? 2 cups of sugar, Brooke?
Yes.
2 cups of sugar. Okay, back to my dry ingredients. Sugar, this one has been like in the humidity. I'm just gonna give it like a little aerate punch because there's some clumps in here. And then, okay, 1 cup and 2 cups. So we're gonna beat these. I'm actually really glad we're doing this because there's some baking indicators that are kind of hard to describe in words, but they're the kind of thing where once you see it one time, you're like, oh, I totally get it. Okay, we had 2 cups of regular granulated sugar, 4 large eggs. Lock her down, and I hope this isn't too loud, but what we're going for is pale, pale and it holds a ribbon. I'll show you what that means. So this is gonna take a couple of minutes. Okay. Okay, well, come on back. You guys are adorable. Okay, so eggs going over here. I just want to show you a couple other measuring things. Brooke, well, how much milk do I need? 1.5 cups?
Yes.
Okay, 1.5 cups of milk. Now, back to our liquid measure, right? The only thing I want you guys to keep in mind is don't look from here, okay? It's kind of hard to tell. There's numbers on the back. When you're measuring your liquid ingredients, get down level with it. We said 1.5 cups?
Yes.
1.5 cups, confirmed. Okay, 1.5 cups level. So I'm down here. We're really, really level with the red line, looking good. But I'm up here and honestly, it looks like 1 3/4 cups. So this will affect your measurements. Get down to the milks level. Can you use other milks? I mean, yeah, but it's not gonna be as good. There are many occasions where it doesn't matter what milk you have, just use it. Cake and cake-like things, it does matter. I would use whole milk. The fat content in the milk and the sweetness of regular cow's milk are two important factors. You could use some other stuff, but it's gonna be a different product. Make sense? Everyone's nodding. Okay, we've got our milk, we've got butter, oil. We need, how much oil? Half cup, okay, I'm gonna wait. Oh no, I need this. Okay guys, I'm gonna go off script and show you something. Jerry, it's okay. As much as I wanted to drill home that you use dry measures to measure dry stuff and liquid measures to measure liquid stuff, you can measure liquid and dry. Does that make sense? Because there's no risk of settling and getting too much in there. Whatever you do when you are baking or whatever, I would do your very best to maintain and use your complete set, okay? Because every one of these sets is slightly different. Phil is falling asleep. He's yawning behind the camera, you guys. Sorry, I'm not entertaining enough. So try and use your set together. That way the measurements correspond. You get it? Because it can be slightly more or less depending. Okay, so that said, I'm gonna use my half-cup measure. Half-cup oil, right, Brooke?
Yes.
Half-cup oil, okay. In she goes to the butter. I'm putting it in there because they're gonna be added together, okay? Okay? Okay. Things are going well. How's everybody doing? Are there questions?
There are lots of questions.
Questions, lay them on me.
Kristen wants to know, in the mix, if you should be using a whisk, not the paddle, or does that not matter?
Really good question. Kristen wants to know, should I be using the whisk or the paddle? In this case, we're using the whisk because we're starting with the eggs. So you wanna whip air into it. Now, if I was starting with room temperature butter, I'd want to use the paddle. Whisk, one, it's a big old mess when you're using room temp butter. It gets all stuck in there. It would whip too much air into the room temp butter. So again, look at the recipe. If it says beat, that means generally paddle. If it says whip or whisk, it means whisk attachment. But most recipes should say, if they're well written, fitted with the paddle attachment or fitted with the whisk attachment, okay? Okay, so guys, get in here. This is like a good shot. Come on in. See, look at this gorgeousness. See how light and pale this is? And see it, you guys see what's happening? As it falls, I'll show you again. As it falls, it ribbons back and forth. That's what we mean. Ah, it's gorge. Does that make sense? Visual, nice visual indicator? Okay, we're good. Now, what I am gonna do before we go any further is scrape down the sides of the bowl. That's a recipe phrase that we insert a lot of the time. Scraping down sides of the bowl is needed. That is a common sense move. Look in, yeah, it's kind of sticking to the side. I bet that's not all incorporated. So lift up your apparatus and just get in there and give it a good scrape down. Make sure you go all the way to the bottom. That tiny nipple of the bowl at the bottom, notorious for catching butter and sugar and stuff like that. Okay, but we've got our gorgeous egg and sugar mixture. Lock it on. And I think what happens next? Eggs, then fat? Oh no, eggs are in there. Fat, then dry, then wet. It is what happens, I know it. Okay, so now I'm gonna stream in my oil and my melted butter. I might steal this teeny tiny saucepan. I got David's attention. Just kidding, it's so cute. Good for melting butter and like heating up hot chocolate. I don't even know what else. Okay, so I've got my gorgeous fat in here. Let's add some vanilla. Remember guys, pure vanilla extract is your best bet and your most inexpensive bet. I think I got egg on my nose. If you have vanilla beans lying around, absolutely toss one in. This recipe, I believe, calls for 2 teaspoons of vanilla.
1 tablespoon.
Whoa, 1 tablespoon. You guys want to know how many teaspoons is in a tablespoon? 3. Jerry got it. So don't feel like you need to get another thing dirty. You can use the teaspoon. Another cool thing that I think you guys might be seeing more and more of is vanilla bean paste, which is really just the inside of the vanilla beans. I said vanilla beans. Vanilla beans, like already pre-scraped for you. And so you'll get those flecks. It's a little less expensive than buying the whole bean, but you'll get that great floral aroma that you get from beans. Using extract, no problem. We've got vanilla, we've got our fat in here. Okay, now I think I'm gonna give it one more scrape. Unlock. One more scrape, make sure that's all incorporated, and then we're gonna add our dry ingredients. Okay, this is another recipe language thing that we're kind of forced to write it this way, and it sounds more complicated than it is. So these are my dry ingredients. This is my milk, 1.5 cups. And when it says alternating, it says like add dry ingredients alternating with milk in 3 additions, beginning and ending with flour. I mean, that sounds so much more complicated than it is. All it means is like, I'm gonna add this 3 times. A third, a third, a third. In between, I'm gonna add the milk. Okay, makes sense? The flour, when you add it last, helps to kind of bind and emulsify everything. That's why you do it last. Okay, are we locked? On low, which on these machines is called stir, which is nice. I'm gonna try and do this and not make a huge mess. I'll come over here. And don't feel like this has to be perfect, perfect, perfect as far as a third goes. You know, you're just gonna eyeball it. But you do wanna beat it until mostly incorporated at this point before you add the milk. And like, if you're in a rush, I usually am, a little 1, 2, 3, back to stir. So about half of the milk, does that make sense? We're doing math? Yes? All right, milk is looking good, incorporated. Back to the flour. Brooke, lay on some other questions.
We have someone wondering what would happen if you added less sugar.
Okay, good question. What happens if you add less sugar? Which I realize is a concern these days. It's not gonna turn out the same. Sugar doesn't only offer sweetness, but it has chemical properties that make the cake look and feel like this particular cake. Sugar also offers moisture, so you're going to get like a more dense, drier cake. So sugar is not a kind of thing that you can like just sub 1-to-1 or, you know, like for honey or maple or something unrefined. It takes some fiddling. So I'm not a fan of like some of the sugar substitutes that you can bake with. I don't like the aftertaste. So that's my answer, is it's not gonna be that. Phil, you can sneak peek right there. But we'll get there in a minute. Okay, what else, Brooke?
Someone wants to know what the difference is between whole milk and skim milk, and if you can swap in this recipe and use buttermilk.
Okay, got it. 3-part question. What's the difference between whole milk, skim milk, and can I use buttermilk in this recipe? I think that was all of them. So the difference is fat content. So It's interesting, this new like marketing ploy that you've seen on maybe some yogurts that are now touting themselves 4%. That just means whole milk yogurt. So fat content on whole milk, dairy products, or on milk and yogurt is 4%. Low fat is usually 2%, and skim is like 0 to 1%. So the fat in the milk is going to help, like the butter and the oil, keep the cake moist. So I would say in a pinch you could use low-fat milk. You could use buttermilk. It will be a drier cake, okay? I would say don't use skim milk. Skim milk, I would only use it for cereal or coffee if that's your thing. But it doesn't, it behaves more like water than anything else in baking and stuff. Okay, I'm going back in. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Again, making sure I get down the bottom. Okay, I think everything's in there. Right? I did eggs. I did my dry. Is there anything laying around here that I forgot? I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Brooke, fact checking. Okay, so now let's talk about our prepared pan. 9 by 13. Remember, if you wanted to make this in layer cake formation, I'd say 9-inch or 8-inch, it'll work in both types of rounds. The other reason I like the sheet cake is I don't have to measure. So if I were making a layer cake, I would probably get really fussy and like measure. I go like 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup until I was out. This you can just dump it in. See what I mean? So much easier. But don't forget to scrape everything out. Jerry, did you have a question?
Yes, kind of silly. How would you make this into a funfetti cake?
Oh, how could you make it into a funfetti cake? You're just going to fold in sprinkles. It's true. So yeah, if you want to make, it's true though, this is a great, I'll just call this a basic yellow cake base. So there's a lot you can do to this. You could add, a tablespoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, pinch of cloves, turn it into a spice cake, top it with cream cheese frosting. You could fold in chocolate chips or blueberries. You could make a crumb topping, my personal favorite. So this is like a really good blank canvas to kind of play with. But we're going to top it with chocolate frosting. Huh? Good. Okay, see this? Nice cake? Going in the oven. 350, middle rack. This is another situation where rack placement matters. If you bake this on the bottom's going to be darker and drier than the top. Does that make sense? If you bake it on the top rack, top's going to be browner and drier than the bottom. You see what I mean? Because the heat's radiating off the top and the bottom and the walls. Middle rack, make it count, okay? All right, let's clean up my area. Okay, guys, I have really good news. Do you want to know what it is? I made a cake ahead of time. Yes. Okay, so we've got a cake pre-made, ready to go. We'll wipe this down later, but guys, take care of your stand mixers. Give them a nice wipe down when you're done. You don't want to find like any bits and pieces in here that when you go to make your cake the next time, it falls into the batter. Gross. Okay, this is my beautiful cake. 350 degrees, 35 to 40 minutes. Remember, set your timer on the short end, maybe even before that, like 5 minutes before, so you can start taking a look, okay? It should spring back when it's done, clean toothpick test, in a couple of places, and then you let it cool. This one I made yesterday. We know it's completely cool. That's important for frosting because otherwise the frosting will melt. Get it? Okay, I'm going to show you how to make the frosting. Cake. Any questions on cake itself before we get going on frosting?
Someone wanted to know if you could use Splenda.
Someone wants to know if you can use Splenda. The Splenda people say that you can substitute Splenda 1 for 1. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the flavor of Splenda, but theoretically you can use it in this sort of situation. That's personal preference. Okay? Any other questions?
Their oven doesn't have a middle rack, so should they go to the upper rack or to the lower rack?
My oven doesn't have a middle rack. I think, is you don't know that you can adjust your oven racks. Almost every oven, you can adjust them. Like, and I'm going to cheat. Typically, I'd say don't open the oven once you put the cake in there, at least for a little bit. But do you see how all three of these can be taken out? Actually, that's a lie. The bottom one can't be. And a lot of ovens these days, there's one that is more challenging to rearrange. But almost always, two of them you can easily take out and adjust. Does that make sense? If, person with the oven rack question, you are at home, will you go look and look at your oven and see what the deal is? Because I'd be surprised if you couldn't adjust it. Any other cake questions before we get going?
No, just a non-cake question we can talk about later.
A non-cake question we can talk about later, so cryptic. How do I do it? You guys, it's a whole other episode. Okay, we're making a simple chocolate ganache frosting. 1.5 cups of heavy cream, okay? Ganache is just chocolate melted with cream, more or less. 1.5 cups, I'm gonna heat it in this saucepan until it just comes to a boil. It's gonna happen pretty fast. And I'm gonna put a pinch of salt in here too. Remember guys, sweets need salt too. I don't know that you've ever had the opportunity to taste something unsalted, but you'll notice. You'll be like, something about this is weird. But salt helps to balance flavors. It helps to kind of bring out flavors of things as well, in sweets as well as savories. 1.5 cups of cream. Let's hang out here for a sec. And then I have 1.5 cups of semi-sweet chocolate. These are, I think Guittard calls these wafers, these discs. They're really good in chocolate chip cookies because you get big chunks of chocolate, but they'll work here too. So 1.5 cups of semi-sweet chocolate, chips, wafers, or chopped chocolate, okay? Just anything smallish, 1.5 cups of that, and then 3/4 cup of milk chocolate chips. You could make this with all one type of chocolate, but I think you'll find the combination is actually pretty nice. All semi-sweet, it's like a little dark against the cake, and all milk, it's like a little sweet. So I think we arrived at a nice happy medium here. Okay, the cream's coming up. Remember, I put a pinch of salt in there. The only other thing this is gonna get is vanilla. Guess what? I made a swap out of this too, but I want you guys to see how easy this is. Questions about ganache, cake, or not cake?
I have a response about the oven.
Oh,
She says that it can be adjusted, there's just no middle slot. And then someone else said that their gas range only has 2 shelves.
their gas range only has 2 shelves. Okay. And wait, and there's no middle slot?
The original answer to the question says that she can adjust her racks, there's just no middle slot to put one of the racks in the middle.
Okay, interesting.
Kind of move them up and down a little.
Right. So just if your oven only has, like upper third and lower third, get to as close to the middle as you can. I would say bottom. I think hot tends to be you're gonna get some over browning. So if that feels like more of the middle, you can put it on top. You just might need to cover with foil when you're close so it gets too brown. And we're boiling. See how fast that happened? Woo! Okay, and then I'm gonna pour it. Sorry, I'll let you guys see. Right over the chocolate. And this is making ganache. Now, if you adjust, here, meet me over here, you guys. If you adjust your amounts of cream and chocolate, you can get a thicker ganache or a thinner ganache. Thicker ones would work for like truffles, making chocolate truffles at home, or thinner ones for just pouring over cake for like an easy glaze. But we're gonna whip this frosting. I'm gonna add a little bit of vanilla. I think it's 2 teaspoons. This is a case where it doesn't really matter. Now, if you wanted to do a flavored frosting, say you had like folded in like a little bit of almond extract, you could put a little almond extract in there, or if it was holiday time, you wanted to make it minty, you can put a little mint extract in here, top the whole thing with some crushed peppermints. These are some good ideas, you guys. I'm just giving them away for free. Okay, other questions? I'm so glad we got to the bottom of that middle rack thing though.
So,
I
we
forgot.
have one viewer that's admiring your chopping block, but she wonders how do you clean it?
Oh, that is a good question. Okay, this is a booze block. They're not inexpensive, but they will last you a really long time if you take care of it well. we're having issues. Okay, technical issues, we're gonna keep going. Okay, but to wash it, hot, soapy water, I like to use the green side of my sponge. Sometimes, however, boards can get especially funky. I like to sprinkle it with coarse salt and take a half a lemon, and you like scour it with that. I find that to be helpful. One thing you want to think about with wood boards, though, they do need some conditioning. You know, they're usually fused together, and you can kind of see these seams. You see the lines here? After time, and especially if you like don't always take great care of it, this is obviously beautifully taken care of. Right, David? But they may, if they're not well taken care of, start to split along the seams. So like food grade mineral oil, or you can even in some nice kitchen shops find like board wax that you can massage into them. Those are my tips. David, do you have other tips?
One other tip, if it gets really funky.
Yeah.
Very diluted bleach and water solution.
That David's other suggestion was to, if it gets really funky and yucky, a very, I can't think of the math word, but like very low percentage bleach to water solution that you can wash with. And that'll also kill anything weird if you happen to be like, I don't know, doing a lot of raw chicken. But that's why I tend to like a plastic board that I can put in the dishwasher to do all my raw meat stuff. So then I know it goes through the sanitation cycle, the sanitizing cycle. I don't have to worry about too much. Does that help? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, guys, remember here I poured the cream over the chocolate. And then I'm just going to, you kind of want to walk away and do something else for a few minutes. It takes about 5 minutes, but it should just be about melted. You just want to start in the center. Guys, this is super satisfying to watch, so get in here. And it will start to come together in the middle. I'm not going to rush it. Splishy, splashy, splishy, splashy. And when it happens, it's one of the more satisfying kitchen tasks. But you can see, now I've got like chocolate milk or chocolate cream. Yum! But it's going to start to emulsify in the center. Soon.
Does it make a difference if you add the chocolate to the milk as opposed to the milk to the chocolate?
Jerry has a good question. Does it matter if you add the milk or the cream to the chocolate or the chocolate to the cream? I've done it both ways. Technically, they always tell you to pour the cream over the chocolate. I think it's sort of a tea situation. You know how you always want to pour, the English always say you want to pour your hot water over the tea versus the tea into the hot water. So I'm sure there's like some sciencey business about it, but I also think it's nicer, you have more control if you're doing it in a bowl. But if you're lazy, that's fine. You can just dump it in the pot. Okay, so this is, remember, some milk chocolate, some semi-sweet chocolate, and heavy cream, some vanilla, and a pinch of salt. That is yum delish. So it's not quite ready to use. See how it's so thin? So we want to let it cool a little bit. This bowl has been sitting for probably an hour, maybe more. See how much thicker it is? So this is actually really nice consistency. I could actually just pour this over this cake, but we're going to whip it to give it a little bit more of like frosting texture, okay? So I'm going to go hand mixer now. And I hope this doesn't take too long, but I want you guys to get the idea. And there's really nothing to it. You're just looking for like frosting. You want it to be like whipped, looking slightly lighter in color. But this will continue to set up. Remember, there's solid chocolate in here, so once you whip, you want to frost pretty quickly thereafter. Any questions while we're whipping?
No, everyone's just loving watching this stuff come together.
Yeah, Guys, melted chocolate, there's nothing like it. And I'll say this, I am not a huge chocolate fan, which is like hard to explain. I like chocolate and sometimes I even love it, but I'm not a chocoholic. So I take my chocolate pretty seriously, and I can stand behind this chocolate frosting that it gets the job done. For chocoholics and chocolate bandwagoners alike. See how we're like getting some air in there? You can even see the bubbles. You can absolutely do this on a stand mixer, but like, I don't want to wash that thing right now. I also have access to the hand mixer and the stand mixer and like a very nice group of people who helps me clean up and set up. So do what you need to do. Also, remember, you can make the cake a day ahead. Just let it cool completely, then give it a nice tight wrap. Keep it covered. But you do want it to be cool before you frost. See, it's starting to get a little bit lighter in color. We've got this one we can compare it to. And this I'll just turn into frosting like later today. Any questions? No. Hypnosis by chocolate? So you guys, this recipe is on realsimple.com. Search birthday cake, realsimple.com, or make it yourself birthday cake and you'll find it. But it is a great kind of all-purpose blank canvas cake to play with if you're sort of up for some experimentation. Give it a whiz. We're gonna get there, guys. We're gonna get there. In under an hour, I think. I'm turning it up. But see how this is thickening? Almost like when you were beating whipped cream. There's cream in here, but see how it's starting to hold a trail? You can see those ripples. Ripples in still chocolate. Question? Okay, sometimes, can you guys hear me okay over this thing? Yeah. Sometimes their cakes deflate. Why might that happen? One, check your measuring spoons. True story, I was using a 1.5 teaspoon measure for a long time when I thought it was a teaspoon measure. So if you have too much chemical leavener, your cake will often like rise and then fall because there's not enough structure, there's not enough flour and everything else to hold that air in place. Does that make sense? So that is one thing. 2, bad recipe. 3, you could be under baking. So when you test it, make sure if you're doing clean toothpick, make sure to really test the center. And then when you're doing the finger test to see if it springs back, same thing, I would say there's a place to do it, which is about halfway between the center and the edge, okay? So I would check like there. See how it springs back even now? Question? It's a good question. Egg allergy. Off the top of my head, I would say whatever egg substitute that you use. It's another thing, it's not going to be an easy one-to-one replacement, so I would look on whatever you're using. Some folks successfully substitute chia seeds soaked in liquid. I have not tried this with this cake, and that is like the honest truth. When you're making substitutions like that for a more traditional in a more traditional recipe, you got to try it. So I know that we could Google on the internet right now, like how many tablespoons of soaked chia seeds do I need to replace eggs, and it would give us some approximation, but we won't know until we try it. Okay, so that is one idea. because the chia seeds will also, they offer bind and bounce. And that's something that eggs offer. If you think about like a frittata, when it's overcooked, you know, like gets kind of bouncy, same thing in the cake. So if you ever, say, bake a cake with an extra large egg instead of a large egg, and you'll be like, wait, why is this kind of bouncy? Potentially wrong size egg. Okay, see how this is getting nice and thick, lightening up. This is same mixture, just warm and not whipped yet. I realize some of these things like are hard to watch in real time, but I do want you guys to see how this changes. You can watch it and fast forward later. How many of you guys out there in the world have August birthdays? Or have someone in your immediate family with an August birthday? One of my sisters has an August birthday. And one of my aunts. But I know like at least a dozen people with August birthdays. Anyone in this room have an August birthday? No. Okay, bad sample. Also see, you guys, how much volume I'm getting? That's because we're whipping air into this. It's getting thicker. See those ripples? It's also just a really easy frosting to make. Buttercream is great, but it can take some practice to do it well. This one is like kind of hard to screw up. There's another actually very delicious chocolate frosting on realsimple.com. I believe it's sour cream chocolate frosting that I developed years ago, which is another one of my faves. I love that tang with chocolate, like black bottoms, cream cheese and chocolate, creme fraiche and chocolate. I love that combination. Guys, see how thick this is getting? Yum. Question. Really? Good question. If you wanted to make a marble cake, would you just be adding chocolate to the same batter? Here's the thing. What I would recommend, you could add a little bit of cocoa powder. You divide the batter, make your batter, divide it in 2 bowls. Then you could add a couple tablespoons of cocoa powder to one of the bowls, and then you put in your non-chocolate batter, and then dollop your chocolate batter over, and then you're going to take a toothpick, a knife, offset spatula, and you're going to swirl it together. That's like the cheater's way. The other way is to take out some of the flour and substitute cocoa powder, which is maybe like more complicated than it's worth. So I would say just add a little bit of cocoa powder to one of those bowls and swirl it in. Make sense? Who wants to lick this? Jerry! Anybody else? I'll put it right here. That sheet tray is clean. Okay, see this yum delish frosting? Look at that. So good. Okay, I'm gonna get a clean spat. That's what we call it in the biz, spat. And we're just gonna frost. Now, just to quickly review, these are my offset spatulas. This is a small or mini. This is medium. They often come in sets of 3, mini, medium, and a big boy, which is, I tend to use it like on the grill. It's a little too big for stovetop work, in my opinion, but these are my favorites for 1, spreading batter evenly in a pan, and 2, getting your frosting in the nooks and crannies, okay? So, do we want all of it? Oh, wait, can you hear? I don't know if you guys can hear this. Like, it sounds whipped. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna put some on. I'm gonna hold back at first, just in case. We can add more, it's harder to take it off. And I'm gonna start with my medium and just kind of, there are people like gathering at the windows. They want this so bad. And then you're just kind of pushing it to the edge. Guys, the people in this room are happy. I have not really eaten my lunch yet, so I'm gonna have cake for lunch and we'll chase it with vegetables. Are you guys gonna make cake this weekend? Maybe not in this room, but on the internet, are you guys gonna make cake this weekend?
Yeah.
No, cake is like special occasion project, but I will say this cake is very easy, very approachable. Give it a try. Make it yourself birthday cake. Real simple. Should we cut a piece? You guys want to see the interior here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cross section.
Dawn says that you solved all of her cake baking problems.
Yes, from one dawn to another. Yeah. Let's see. This is kind of like a first pancake situation. Can I get this out? I do. I can. You know why? Parchment. Wait, is this sticking? No, I got it. I got it. I'm like basically taking the whole cake out, but look at this. And that is what I'm talking about. Guys, thanks for hanging out. This is Real Simple Cooking School. We'll be back in 2 weeks right here with more fun lessons. We're making biscuits. We're making icebox cake coming up. But when you're not making cake, eat seasonally. Check out what's growing locally nearby. It's corn, it's tomatoes, it's peppers, it's chilies. It's the best time of year to cook and not cook. So when you're not cooking, you can make cake, okay? So long, have a good week. Take care of yourself. Don't take it too seriously. We'll see you here soon. So long, bye.